Universitas Atmajaya Yogyakarta. Universitas Atmajaya Yogyakarta dengan bangga menjadi tuan rumah Lomba Debat Indonesia tahun 2025. Ajang yang mempertemukan para pemikir muda terbaik dari SMA seluruh Indonesia. Di sini, gagasan diuji, keberanian diuji, dan logika dipertajam. Kompetisi ini bukan hanya tentang menang, tetapi tentang bagaimana setiap peserta menyuarakan masa depan. Dari Sabang hingga Merauke, para delegasi hadir membawa semangat, budaya, dan harapan. Bersatu dalam satu panggung argumentasi terbesar untuk SMA di Indonesia. Selamat datang di Lomba Debat Indonesia 2025. Siapkan argumen terbaikmu, tunjukkan potensimu, dan jadilah generasi pemikir masa depan.
Ini Cika, dia telah lulus SMA, tapi bingung mau kuliah di mana?
Jangan bingung, mari bergabung bersama kami di Universitas Atmajaya Yogyakarta.
UAJY memiliki 7 fakultas dan 14 program studi yang dapat jadi pilihan loh.
Jangan khawatir, UAJY menyediakan miliaran beasiswa yang bisa kamu dapatkan. Tentunya, terdapat program seleksi yang masih dibuka. Informasi lebih lanjut dapat mengunjungi situs pmb.uajy.ac.id. So, tunggu apa lagi?
Bakal nyesel loh kalau nggak daftar sekarang.
Welcome to Yogyakarta, the city of students. The city where a significant number of public and private schools and universities are located. Universitas Atmajaya Yogyakarta, a private university established on September 27, 1965 by Yayasan Slamet Riyadi Yogyakarta.
Dalam bahasa Sanskerta, Atma berarti jiwa dan Jaya berarti unggul. Sehingga Atmajaya berarti jiwa yang unggul. Universitas Atmajaya Yogyakarta juga memiliki semboyan dalam bahasa Latin Serviens in Lumine Veritatis yang artinya melayani dalam cahaya kebenaran.
The four core values upheld by UAJY are excellence, inclusivity, humanism, and integrity. Excellence implies equality or being better than others. Inclusivity means encompassing all social groups. Humanism, the definition, means to serve the common interest of fellow humans. Integrity means adherence to the moral and ethical principles, honesty, reliability, consistency in words and acts, and a sense of responsibility. UAJY supports diverse values, cultures, religions, races, ethnicities, and languages as a university with students from all across Indonesia. UAJY's diversity is an asset for further collaboration and synergy in preparing for a better future.
Universitas Atmajaya Yogyakarta memiliki 4 kampus yang terbagi menjadi Kampus 1, Gedung Santo Alfonsus. Kampus 2, Gedung Santo Thomas Aquinas. Kampus 3, Gedung Santo Bonaventura. Dan Kampus 4, Gedung Bunda Teresa. Universitas Atmajaya Yogyakarta memiliki fakultas dengan berbagai program studi sarjana, program studi magister, dan international undergraduate program.
Universitas Atmajaya Yogyakarta is a second home for every individual to develop and share information, and a university with a high-quality education to attain unlimited aspirations and accomplishments. To achieve the goals, UAJY provides classrooms with hybrid learning system, laboratories in each faculty as a room to explore, co-working space as a discussion room, medical personnel who are always available in the university clinic room, and a library that provide books, e-books, and digital libraries to open a wide window onto the world in various ways.
UAJY selalu konsisten memberikan pelayanan yang didasari rasa solidaritas kepada sesama. Selama saya bekerja di UAJY, saya merasakan kekeluargaan yang sangat kuat menjadi dasar bagi seluruh sivitas akademika.
UAJY endeavors to develop graduates who are ethical, creative, innovative, adaptive, transformational, collaborative, and benevolent. All these are aimed to help students achieve their future dreams.
Mendidik itu mengajarkan ilmu pengetahuan dan berbela rasa serta berkontribusi pada kesejahteraan masyarakat. Hal tersebut menjadi landasan fundamental bagi Universitas Atmajaya Yogyakarta untuk mencetak generasi muda yang unggul di bidangnya dan memiliki integritas moral yang tinggi. Saya bangga menjadi bagian dari Universitas Atmajaya Yogyakarta. Viva UAJY, kami bangga ada di sini.
Semestinya engkau bisa
mencobanya lebih bijak, semampunya berusaha, berjuang jujur berkarya, tanpa pernah meragukan kemampuan pada kita. Sungguh percayakan saja, kita istimewa bisa.
sungguh sebuah karunia.
Kita saling jaga rasa,
Generasi anak bangsa,
anak bangsa, karena jujur itu juara. Sungguh semua karunia, kita
While waiting for all the observers to settle themselves in, we can start with introduction of the panel of judges. Hi everyone, I'm Justin. I'm gonna be chairing this round. I'm gonna be accompanied by 6 other amazing judges, which I will allow to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Rania. Good luck for this round.
Hi, I'm Dio from Kalimantan Selatan. Good luck.
It's Yuli. Good luck, everyone.
Hi, I'm Renee from DKI Jakarta. Good luck, everyone.
Hi, my name is Anisha from Nusa Tenggara Barat. Best of luck.
Hi, I'm Marvel from Sulawesi Selatan. Have fun and best of luck.
All right, thank you everyone. So those are the panel of judges that will be judging this round. Before we start the debate, can we have also a round of introduction as well as the speaking orders from both teams? You can start from Team Proposition Bali. Okay, for Bali, Putu Rakaila first, Nadine Tirza second, Edgar third, and reply is Putu Rakaila. For opposition, Sumatera Utara. For opposition, Sumatera Utara, first is Nicholas, second is Kelly, third is Sharon, and reply is Nicholas. Right, so once again, welcome everyone to the semi-final round of LDE English 2025. Looking forward for a really entertaining and fun debate under the religion heading. Since this round is also live streamed, please do refrain from name dropping. Please do refrain from making a generalization or other things that may not be required or necessary for the purpose of the debate. Let's keep it civil, let's keep it equitable, and let's have a fun and amazing round for everyone. Without further ado, we can start the debate with first proposition.
Just making sure, is this loud enough? Hello, is this loud? Okay. Okay, then trigger warning because religions, etc., etc. 3, 2, 1. Panels, I am satisfied with myself. I am satisfied that today I have donated to a charity service through my Curious. Only that 5,000 can help a lot of people, and that personally gives me so much comfort as an individual at the end of the day. Proud to propose. Before I go on to my arguments then, I'd like to posit 3 main points of setup. 1, on the world building. We posit to you that in status quo, people who inherently opt into religion and actually care about them can be defined into 2 main folds. A, the rational people in status quo who will do good things regardless, who opt into God simply to seek agency and peace at the end of the day. But also B, the irrational portion that tend to use religion in their own way, especially when it's granted by God's grace that after you die, you still go to heaven anyway. God will still forgive you anyway. We think this is what excuses them with their behavior in the current status quo, and we want to stop that on our side. But onto our mechanization then, I'd like to posit a few points. A, what does the salvation that people seek exactly means? We think this looks like mental peace. This comfort that you get after working 9 to 5, but you're super tired, but you still spare change for a beggar. You still help your kids with homework. It reminds you why you are keep going in the current status quo, and it inherently becomes your motivation to keep going in this very capitalistic society. But B, what does good deeds entail under our side of the house? We think that intuitively that this encompasses basic deeds such as charity, such as helping your neighbors, being kind, and all of those basic moralities that is very much normalized in the current status quo. But let's tackle concerns on religious zealots framing good deeds as racism or something. Simply 3 folds. A, we think that rational peoples will question this religious system already in the current status quo, but B, media focuses on religion anyway in the current status quo. When they do this, these religion are gonna get cancelled, but specifically these zealots are gonna get cancelled. Also C, religious institution exists to discredit these people, and people believe the religious institution above all else, even these religious zealots. The core of religion in itself is loving God and all of its creation. For example, you You love your own child. You love your family. It's a way for you to be kind. It's a way for you to do good deeds. Your pet, etc. Opposition cannot say that people are simply unable to do good deeds when it is as simple as smiling, when it is as simple as being kind to your neighbors, etc. Because religion is vague in its scriptures. They're made so everyone can opt into religion. It likely look like you become a kinder person under our side of the house. Our burden then is simple. Simply, if we can prove to you onto number one why the framing of good deeds will actually help people get better salvation and better peace under our side of the house, but also B, why their framing is inherently harmful regarding people and the people around them, we simply win this debate. On to my first argument regarding why this connects the people further onto God themselves. We posit to you two main points of urgency. One, in the current status quo, the only way that you can cling to God is simply pray. It's your personal connection to God. But here's the thing, panels. The world is not limited to your praying world. It's the creations of God as well that you interact to in your day-to-day lives. That is to say that when you help people, when you be nice to them, etc., you feel peace that you are actually doing something good, that even someone as tired as you can still do something good in this world. When you donate in charity, you see on TV that 1,000 rupiah that you donated actually matter for the starving children in Kenya or something. But secondly, then, on the comparative of people actually being that irrational in the current status quo, simply they'll just stay irrational. But here's the thing, panel, because the good deed is preached so much under our side of the house by priests, by imams, etc., it becomes normalized. So therefore, it becomes a normalized norm. And when you actually do these bad things, when these irrational people do these bad things, we still instill a nausea under our side of the house. We still instill this type of guilt under our side of the house that they still feel deep down in their very, very small, cold hearts. But also then, we posit to you two main layers of solvency that we provide. We provide that one. We think that on our side, people have agency to how they reach salvation, right? How to reach salvation themselves. That is to say, they need to be an inherently good person to reach salvation. On our side, they need to actively put an effort towards it. But secondly, religion in itself is a very bad conflict. Religion in places of poverty, we think that good deeds is simply being nice, that everyone can opt into because it's what gives them mental peace. But simply, you need the slightest bit of effort so the payoff can actually that much more meaningful inside your heart. When you do something and the effort actually pays off being mental peace, that is what makes that effort meaningful. Is that what makes the teaching meaningful at the end of the day? But before I go on to my second argument, is there any POIs? No POIs, alright. Oh, sorry, onto my impacts, we bring you two main layers of impacts. We think that one, the interpretation is personal to every single person. That is to say, this is a unique connection for them at the end of the day. This is what grants them strength to keep going, etc., etc. But secondly, the check and balance of very horrible conservatives is gone specifically on their side of the house, because this is a world reset motion, because this enables people to do bad with the mindset that they have right now, that they can be forgiven later on. This is the mindset of most conservatives and why they are so mean to people most of the time. They need to actually mitigate this under their side of the house. But on to my second argument then, regarding the actual opting in of religion in and of itself. We posit to you two main layers of urgency. We think that one, this world is inherently capitalist and materialistic. That is to say that it is constantly stressful. You are constantly being ambitious. You don't want to get left out pursuing all these material gains. You don't want to get left out in NSDC. You constantly pursue material wealth. You will never feel good for yourself because you are always comparing yourself to others. This lowers your incentive to do good, exactly because you excuse yourself that you're so tired that you can't even do good, that you're so tired that you can't even smile, when it is inherently not true. But secondly, exactly when religion poses family like promising framing like God's grace, we think that God's grace means that every child is a child of God and will reach salvation no matter what they do, what crime they did in the current status quo. These things are what make people adopt religion, because to the normal public's eye, this is what makes the current religion actually questionable in its moral, in its teachings, etc., etc. This is what make people doubt when they opt into religion at the end of the day. We solve this on two things. One, when religion has bad reputation due to the zealots, we prove to you that the majority is indeed not like that the majority are kind because they actually follow the teaching of the priest at the end of the day. This diminishes stereotypes and actually makes religion seem good to the public eye. But secondly, simply being good requires minimal effort. It proves that even though you're tired, even though you're poor, you can still go the extra mile and still be good at the end of the day. Yeah?
Aren't your basic good deeds meaningless if you do not have the money to do good deeds like every other person who has more value in status quo?
please refer to my mechanization, because I've explicitly stated to you that the teach in like impoverished areas are very different than teach in like the city areas, because in impoverished areas, the teaching of good deeds is simply helping your neighbor, is simply being kind, is simply smiling, is also a good deed that you can do because it inherently cheers people up, it inherently makes up that day. To be a good person is not expensive. Please notice, panels. But also onto the impacts here. We posit to you two things. One, simply when people who menstruate, etc., who cannot pray to God due to these externalities, they can still feel good for themselves and outside the house. But secondly, when this is a widespread narrative, when people normalize reciprocal kindness, you feel content on helping your neighbor, they feel content helping you at the end of the day, and this is reciprocal in a normalized status quo, in an ideal status quo of our best case scenario. The way here is simple. Sure, it's easier for you to redeem yourself on their side of the house, but that's not necessarily a good thing, panels, because if you want to redeem yourself on our side instead, after committing crimes, after committing a sin, you need to prove first that you are indeed changed, that you are indeed that kind now, that you have indeed made amends with your victim, that you have changed as an individual. Only then can you be redeemed on our side of the house. You simply get, meanwhile on their side, you simply get baptized and you are deemed a good person. You don't need to do anything to your victim under their side. You don't need to ask for forgiveness for a victim under their side. We think their side is inherently unfair. All reasons above, we beg you to vote for proposition.
Thank you. Can we have first opposition?
Religion is a powerful instrument. It is something that changes the life of others, and it is something that directs a very severe moral compass. That is exactly why it's so important to encompass it within yourself internally with something that is definite to yourself and your moral principles. What is the framework? I think Chris Lange's debate proposition was incredibly uncharitable from the get-go. What does this world actually look like on side opposition? It is to say that one, a society that heavily values these religious principles is to receive salvation and grace. That is the ultimate goal, right? People opt into it for three simple reasons. One, religion is a large teaching. It's something that you learn in school, in your environment, your parents teach you. B, religion revolves around society that is always going to be around you, that is always going to be churches and other religious institutions. And C, religion is somewhat coercive. But let me explain to you why this is not actually harmful inside opposition. It is to say that one, people opt into it or get out if they want to, but two, that even if they're coerced to enter, the principles that you learn inside are good and they still bring good impacts. So what's the whole point of the explanation? It proves that the characterization of people who want God's grace are not simple people who want to believe and, oh, I'm just going to do something good for the sake of doing good and believing in it and believe that I will suddenly receive salvation. What are you going to do at night after killing someone? You're going to pray in hope of forgiveness? It's not as simple as that. There is a certain level of standards that you have to believe in before you are able to receive grace. So I think the characterization of being granted God's grace is not what PM try and tell you. They said that, oh, everyone will naturally receive it. Everyone is inherently going to get God's grace. I think it's not inherent for a simple reason. It's because the religious principle of receiving grace is indeed having good character. You have to follow religious principles before you get grace, right? If you did not believe in set good principles, then why would you receive grace in the first place? Then individuals still follow principles as a religious teaching. This is our check and balance that they never characterize, because the check and balance is simple. There will always be a moral compass on side opposition, because you know that stealing is wrong. No one has to tell you that, or you're taught that from a young age. Morality doesn't just stem from religion. It stems from the fact that religion is not the only moral compass. You have things like your family and your environment telling you what's right and wrong, but also you adopt religion because it aligns with your moral compass. Or when you adopted religion, you added their principles to your moral compass. Now, I think people on the opposition side would look like what? One, people opt into the narrative and believe it in a proper way, not like what proposition characterized, but two, people follow the religious teachings because it is a prerequisite in order to receive grace in the first place. Now, I think this mitigates the harms on what they said about, oh, people won't be genuine, people will just do good things for the sake of doing it and not actually mean it, and they won't believe in it. Now, two substantives, one the principality and two the social framework. But before I go into that, let's quickly assert or address their assertions. They tell you a lot about how there are so many meaningful impacts when it comes to doing good deeds and good acts. They tell you, one, good acts is self-determined, and two, it requires minimal effort. I'll respond to this as quickly as possible. One, no. Religion is the one who decides good acts. Why? Because it is in the motion that is preached. It's something that's taught you, it's something that's promoted to you, it's something that's propagandized, and it's something that spreads to you in a manner that, oh, the reason this is good is because religion told me that this something is good, and that's important to characterize because, well, where else would you get the good idea? You would still want to follow religion's principle of good acts because then it would mean you have a higher chance of being close to that religion's principles. But secondly, I think the problem is that you can do minimal effort, that good deeds don't require that much. The problem then is people opt to do minimal effort, that it doesn't require that much. So I would just rather do the low, it's the minimum, because I know I'm still doing good. I still have the status of doing a good act. But there were a lot of other things to mention. Let's actually address this in my substantives. Firstly, what is the first substantive? It's on principality. I think if you did opt into this, you're likely to be a religious believer under three premises. One, there's a certain criteria because you still have to be good. That's what we tell you about. You still need to follow what religions teach because one, character and actions are still valued. Just because you follow God's grace doesn't mean that you can be an absolutely bad person and somehow still receive grace. That's not how it works. But secondly, individuals who opt into it believe in it. They believe that if I want to receive God's grace, I need to follow the teachings, I need to do well, and then to actually be proper in line with the principles. But two, I think even if people who don't believe in religion still opt into this, what are the harms? I think Prop might try and tell you that's ingenuine redemption. That when you believe in grace, then people will just inherently do bad things because they know they'll be forgiven. That's not the case. Because, well, we tell you there is a certain condition. You have to follow principles of religion. If you weren't a good person, there would be no reason for receiving salvation. You would need to actually be actively trying to redeem yourself when you commit something bad because you know that otherwise it wouldn't fall in line with grace. But more importantly, I think even if grace, quote unquote, trying to attempt grace is ingenuine, this is still good because I think teaching and learning and practicing certain principles, regardless of how intent or genuinity you are, still is good. For instance, when I go to church and I pay my tithe, it's still good even if I wasn't very genuine about it. I still contribute. But why then does this not apply to good acts on side proposition? It is to say because good acts doesn't carry large impacts, right? Good acts would then be minimal exactly because they tell you that it requires minimal effort. Just because you have the status of doing something good, that I did something right today, that's a good act and I'm not going to continue. But next, I think people who behave negatively, who use grace, is their main problem. That, oh, because I'm behaving negatively, I'm not going to care that much about it because I'll receive grace at the end of the day. This is not a problem for two simple reasons. One, grace is arbitrary. What does this look like? It means people don't know the full metrics of how to receive grace. Because exactly of that, I want to continuously perform well. I want to continuously be good. I want to continuously follow the principles of religion because I know that I don't truly know how to receive grace. In that, I will always try and stay aligned with my principles so that I don't lose my path. But secondly, there's a fear of God. I think most believers opt into this idea that most people are feared of God, that fear God. I don't want to do anything that may say, upset my God or my religious leader or my religion because I fear them because it's something that's been taught to me to be bad if I don't listen. But more importantly, what is the principality of grace then? Why is grace actually so important? It's because grace provides this certain closure to people that so long I am good, I will actually be able to have God's grace. But why doesn't this exist on side proposition? It's simple because there's actually a way for us to provide salvation and redemption to people that even if I did something wrong, I'm not going to stress about it and in an attempt do genuine good acts to try and balance it out. My solution then is to actually try and actively repent and redeem because I know that if I follow God's grace, I'm able to redeem myself. What does this mean? There's second chances for people because they understand that the value of becoming part of God's grace is to say that I can still be better no matter what. Now, what is the problem then? I think acts of good is decided directly by religious leaders and the religion as I explained at the start. It's because of two things. A, society imposes this idea on you, and B, religious leaders have the power that they teach the church, they provide the teachings and the principles, and they are the ones leading it in the first place. But I think arbitrarily, this works for grace. The reason why arbitrariness works for grace is what we explained earlier. It's based on certain religious principles. However, for proposition, there is a narrative control on good acts. Like good acts is determined by what your religion believes and what your religion wants you to believe. Therefore, religious leaders have the authority to abuse this. It means that if I want you to pay large tithes and I want you to make big donations to the church, it then means that that is something that I consider good, and if you don't do it, it's not a good thing. This exists because why? Religion is coercive. But B, constraint, because individuals feel that if I don't cooperate, then I will be screwed, that I will have certain punishments, right? That's why this coercion with no benefits. But second substantive then, sorry, very right. social framework. Why won't this happen in opposition to premise? One, there's a consensus. Most people believe in this. It is to say that if more believers opt into grace, then the principle carries over. The religious leaders and anyone else will behave in it. Therefore, there won't be abuse of authority because religious leaders themselves believe in this world that I need to follow God's good grace. There won't be abuse. What are the impacts then? A, harmonical society because more individuals behave well, and catharsis because more individuals have the echo chamber of believers. Okay, proposition will probably address this and say, oh, we still have that because when you do good acts, you will also have a harmonic society. Here's the difference then. The belief of good actions, we explain two things, panels. One, people do good deeds based on the societal standards that were imposed on them and not something that is based on religion text. It is easy to abuse, and we already explained that to you. But secondly, good acts which aren't characterized fully on contribution. As they mentioned, that you can do very small acts and it will still be considered a good act. That is exactly why contribution won't be so impactful. Therefore, it's ingenuine, it's minimal. That is why, panels, if you want a world that actually opts for change and the ability to redeem yourself, to repent, and to find God's grace, that is exactly why you to stand on side opposition. So proud to oppose. Also, sorry if I offended anyone in my speech. I forgot to say trigger warning. I know religious is very sensitive.
Thank you. Can we have second proposition?
Trigger warning on religious teaching. Everything I'll be saying is only for the sake of competitive debating. Sumut's entire case is contingent on their uncharitable framing that people are never going to buy in because they already have the moral compass. I'll prove to you why it's wrong later on. But their analysis was entirely really jumpy when they say that the vagueness of why people exists on the God's grace itself is what makes people want to opt in into it, and what makes people who actually want to opting into it more because they know it's really vague and they don't know what to do. People who are confused won't put much effort on something they're really unsure of, panel. We beg you to not buy on side opposition. I'll frame to this debate on three folds then. Firstly, let's get a clear understanding of religion itself here. We think that the purpose is to do things that aligns with the word of God, right? Notice when it comes in the spectrum, but if you really analyze the core of every religion itself, they wouldn't want you to do crimes. They wouldn't want you to kill other people just because these are criminal acts that can be tempting sometimes. But we think that exactly when they try to protect about how you want to do good acts in the future and how you can actually not harm other beings that is God's creation itself, right? This also aligns with how you can actually get closer towards God and how you can actually manifest into a better relationship of God by praying, for example. We think that this aligns perfectly with a good deed that looks like what we already posted from P1, right? That looks like the acts that doesn't harm other people, but most importantly, the relationship that you can actually get with God by actually praying more, for example. But secondly, then the preach of salvation, we think that this looks like the emphasis of the good deeds, which is really important because it's spread through churches, temples, and this is going to be validated by pastors, for example. This is what's going to make these people validated about how these are taught by the leaders of the religion itself. We think that this is important because how we can use it as a guiding tool towards making other people to opt into good is going to be something that is crucial because we notice how people in the status quo are not going to do this good act. We think that the emphasis works perfectly and is going to manifest into good things. We think that firstly, the manifestation of reciprocity, but secondly, about how the fact that they can actually feel closer towards God because they're doing these good acts. But thirdly then, I think that it's crucial to note how the comparative look way bad on theirs of the house, right? When they actually concede to you about how the good grace is really vague, which means that we think that we can frame it into the fact that doing the bare minimum is already okay on theirs of the house because this is there's no form of vagueness in this. But even if we still be charitable in this debate about how maybe people will still pray on theirs of the house to actually get the grace, we think that the delta is on the effort that can actually manifest into how people act that is only going to be achievable on ours of the house. Even if they can actually be closer towards God, the effort that they put inside the society is not going to be there because people are not going to opt in into good deeds. But we think that highlight the word granted in this motion panel. We think that the validation is going to be harder to get of the idea of good grace itself because you have to be granted by the God's grace itself, which is really vague, and they concede towards it, which is going to be hard for them to actually give the mechanization of how this is going to be anyway applicable on their of the house. Realistically, we think that doing good deeds is more intuitive perspective, right, about how people can have a better understanding on ours of the house is not going to be vague, and this is why people are going to opt in on ours of the house. 3 contribution coming from my speech then. Firstly, on top of urgency. Second, in terms of buy-in. Also one use of concept in terms of how this will affect society. First issue in terms of urgency then. They posit 2 things. Firstly, on principle, there's already a moral compass. 2 responses under this. Firstly, we think that people come in a spectrum, right? Not every people have the moral compass. They cannot just cherry pick about how everyone is going to be doing good deeds when there's still criminals outside there, and there's still people who actually do bad things because they are tempted to do these criminal acts, right? Which is why we're actually trying to propose, we're not going to try to propose this on ours of the house. We're trying to like stop this, and which is why we think that proposing the good deeds is what's crucial. But secondly then, it never hurts to put a good act in society, right? As much as we think that the moral compass, even if in some extent it already can exist, it never hurts to actually put a better deed towards these people when that is never harmful. It is necessary for these people to do more acts. The second thing they bring was about how good acts don't give a lot of impact towards the religion itself. Firstly, when that good act, the fact that good act already align with the interest of the religion itself shows how shows how it already aligns with the interest of the religion. We think that this, as far as we can actually like give the words of God nicer on ours at the house, and we can actually posit to you but the interest that is fulfilled, we think that it's okay. But secondly then, we think that as far as even if it is a small act, we think this is a stepping stone of people having the incentive to do bigger acts in the future, right? The main, like, people are not going to do good acts immediately, which is why we think that we have to have the good deeds first, which is why they're going to use this as a stepping stone, and later on they are going to have better incentive in the future. They needed this stepping stone. Second issue in terms of buy-in then. Let's look at the comparative that happens on both sides. We think that on side opposition, people are going to less likely to opt in into religion itself. Why so? Because of the fact that it's really vague and they did concede towards its fake, it will come with a lot of requirement that they don't even know what are they going to deal with and what is the actual importance of following the good grace. This is something they never posit to you on P1 on O1. We think that the fact that A, they're not going to be sure about how to get into that good grace, but B, they don't even know like the importance of the good grace from the beginning. We think that's going to be really unsure, and they're not going to opt in into this really vagueness. The comparative that look like on side opposition is way better when, although it looks like simple things, the pushes that actually going to manifest from like the preach itself is going to be really good, because now people are going to have the understanding that the people within this religion are doing good things, right? Which means that reciprocity is going to exist on our side of the house later on, and they're going to actually have a better form of like actual good deed, right? Among these people itself, there's going to be a lot of people that is doing good deeds, and they're tempting because we think that they actually want it also as well, right? Because firstly then, it manifests into the good image that religion actually have the people, good people that do good deeds within it, which is why they want to opt in into that society. But secondly then, we think that reciprocity is not going, reciprocity is going to exist better, and if they really want to push about how people are going to exploit it, notice how this is this house prefers motion, this is the world reset motion, with the fact that we can actually push people to actually do more good deeds. We think that this already can make more people opting into it, and less people are going to like exploit it. But under my 2 clashes, it becomes crystal clear how only this on our side of the house, people are not going to be vague about the idea of religion itself, which is why it's going to lead into better people that opting in. But furthermore, we can actually posit to you the urgency that people have to be good, have to do this good deed, and it is necessary. It never hurts to do good things. But before my extension, yes. Even if you do something good on your side of the house, it's really marginal because you can actually have the bare minimum, right? If you actually look at the God's grace itself, you can actually have the really vagueness, and you can actually get the understanding that the bare minimum is already fulfilled. So even if I just pray to God, it's already enough on your side of the house, because they're not going to be doing real effort, when this is crucial, because now society can actually be more progressive on our side of the house. The effort is there. We think that we can get that. But lastly, in terms of how this will affect a society better. Firstly, I think I'd like to negate about how it's unlikely to be twisted by the local pastors or priests itself, right? Firstly, we think that they have the burden to posit what's right, and the push is harder because now they have the burden to actually lead a whole religion, where they have the understanding that they have the responsibility to posit what's right towards the people within that. But secondly then, we think that checks and balance still exist on ours of the house, which means that if these priests are really doing like really bad things, or like doing like twisting the words really badly, people are going to opt it, like call it out, without checks and balance exist. Under this layer, it proves to you the likelihood that people are going to actually opt in furthermore, and how it's not going to be twisted by the priest itself. We think that this pushes about how this can actually manifest into good. When firstly, it pushes people to actually do what the good act, right? Which means that reciprocity is going to rocket better, and about how the incentive is going to be better on ours of the house when we can actually like burden these people to actually do better good acts. But secondly, then when that is it's never the case with how people to feel like they're never enough. When firstly, it's simple things, but secondly, it pushes you to do more things in the future. Within the stepping stones can actually exist on ours of the house. The incentive is going to be better. For that reason, side with Bali.
Thank you. Can we have second opposition?
Am I audible like this? Okay. Three, two, one. It is very easy to think that people are just going to do good deeds just because it is the prerequisite of having salvation. If you think that is the case, then you are wrong. Why? If that is the case, then every single Buddhist on this world will probably be a saint, for example, just because that is the prerequisite of actually gaining salvation. After that, two ways of clashes in this debate. First, on why then good deeds is still probably going to happen on our side of the house. First case, we tell you that good deeds do not only rely on having religion as a moral compass. First, there's going to be a lot of different social contract that makes you want to do good deeds in the first place. For example, being kind, helping each other, does eventually come back to you. This looks like you don't need religion to tell you that you have to help your neighbor because you have other different incentive. For example, you want good relation with your neighbor, so you're probably going to be able to gain safety, for example. But also B, we tell you that you have the incentive to be good because when you are good, you're going to be healthy and you're going to be fulfilled. We tell you that this does not rely upon religion for a few reasons. First, people like to be righteous. There's a certain level of happiness that you feel when you do something that is moral. We tell you that morality is going to be taught to you since you are a child. Your parents tell you that it's wrong to lie because guess what? Your parents have the perfect incentive to tell you that lying itself is wrong because lying is going to harm people around you and also yourself. We tell you when I help other people, I'm going to feel happy because I now feel useful. Human in and of itself have their own wants to actually be helpful, for example. But second, we tell you that morality is just going to be taught, is still also going to be taught inside a certain religion. This looks like how in Christianity, doing good deeds is not necessarily the fact that you're going to be able to gain salvation just because you do good deeds, but good deeds is still heavily going to be told to you that it's going to be really, really good if you're able to do good deed. Just because good deed is not the only prerequisite to salvation does not mean that religion will not teach good deed at all. This is what is entirely so harmful on that proposition because they connect this to you really, really uncharitably to tell you that people are just likely to not really care about good deeds at all. But third then, we tell you that socially, doing good things does benefit you from the very start. For example, if you don't steal, if you have a really, really good credibility, for example, people are more likely to trust you. And we tell you that is a delta in this debate because people are still likely to do good deeds because there's going to be a certain there's always going to be a benefit coming from a social contract in and of itself. Second response is then, even if they tell you that there's going to likely do more bad things, for example, because they're able to gain benefit from doing those kind of bad things, we tell you that there's always criminal justice system that's always going to happen on our side of the house. We know that it's a clean slate debate, and we're going to explain to you why in and of itself CJS is still going to happen even without religion. First, we tell you when someone steals from me, I have the ability to feel that I've been done wrong. There's going to be a lot of social rules. That's going to be the very basis of the social justice system. We tell you that you don't curse, you don't steal because it offends other people. It offends other people on a different level. Later. It offends different people on different levels. We tell you that every single good deeds or bad deeds have a certain level on how it offends people and on how it benefits people. We tell you there's people are always going to be able to actually differentiate what is right and what is wrong. I'll take that POI. I think
doing good in and of itself does not only means that you're going to get the benefit in heaven. Doing good also means that you're going to gain the benefit in the current status quo. Because guess what? When you're being kind, when you're always donating, for example, you're going to have a good reputation. You're probably going to have like more friends, for example. There's always a social construct to tell you to do good, because doing bad in and of itself is going to harm you it's going to harm you on your actual life. Second, then we tell you that humans are able to identify motive and vulnerability. This looks like humans have the ability to sense your reasoning before you do something. This does not rely on God. You're able to do this kind of stuff because you actually have empathy as a human being. As a human being, you know when someone is like being kind to you, and you know when someone is like actually doing something that is harmful. For example, there's always going to be a lot of different levels of like punishment that's going to happen. Onto my extension then. First, on what exactly looking for God's grace looks like, because both of us have not characterized it clearly. First, we tell you that this going to like reading the Bible, for example, of like how you're going to talk and preaching about the teaching in and of yourself, and you're going to internalize the teaching towards yourself. But also second, this looks like you actually pray to God and you actually communicate to God and asking them in and of yourself for their blessing. Why then this is so important in this debate? First, we tell you that God's grace is going to be much better than good deeds because your ability for you to do a good deeds comes from a certain level of privilege that you're able to do. Good deeds come as a different good deeds are going to be credited at different level. This looks like smiling to your neighbor in and of itself is a good deed, but it's still going to be credited much less because God does not really like tell you that, yeah, you can go to heaven because you smiled at your neighbors. Things that is going to happen on their side of the house is probably going to become, you're going to be able to go to heaven because you're able to donate. You're able to actually like sacrifice a certain level of like your own later. You're going to be able to sacrifice a certain level of your own interest because towards a greater good, for example. That's what's going to happen on their side of the house. Why then is this so harmful? First, it's going to be really, really hard for people to actually adhere to this standard because currently we're living in a capitalistic society. This looks like you donating like 5,000, 10,000, for example. It's not going to be valued the same as you, for example, donating like a large percentage of like your own money, for example, because we tell you that in and of itself, the fact that you're donating is the fact that you're actually sacrificing a part of yourself. That is what is going to be actually counted on their side of the house. Also, second, that it is much easier to adhere, especially when to the people who actually need this religion the most. We tell you that religion is always going to be needed the most by people who are always in tough places or people in tough time. This is also the reason why places in conflict, there's a reason why places in conflict are probably going to be like the really most religious one. Because guess what? The main reason why religion in and of itself is so important because it provides a hope and solace. You're able to gain hope and solace. That's why most of the time when we're literally looking at the places with a lot of conflict, they're really, really religious, right? We tell you that it's going to be much easier for these people to actually adhere to this certain religion and to actually gain the benefit of actually being inside the religion because they need it the most. They need this sort of like hope. They need this sort of like solace. We tell you it is much easier for you to just like to wear hijab, for example. It is much easier for you to read your Bible, for example. It is much easier for you to just to pray to God and to communicate with each other because guess what? They were able to do that. Yes. I think on our side of the house, if you're able to do something, you're going to do something. We have already characterized to you so many different types because there's always going to be a social contract where you're going to gain benefit from actually doing good deeds. But also, second then, why then doing like this sort of like good deeds why then this is exactly exclusive on our side of the house? First, it is much easier to adhere. On their side of the house, when the way you're going to gain salvation is by actually doing good deeds. That's what's going to be on the top of your mind when you're thinking about religion because you feel like that is your most important thing that you have to do. I have to do good deeds, but I'm not able to do good deeds right now. That's going to be really, really harmful because guess what? When I need the protection of my God and I'm not able to actually guarantee that I'm going to be safe because I'm not able to do good deeds, it's going to be really harmful. But on our side of the house, it is much easier to actually adhere on like your social. It is much easier to adhere on like the prerequisite of actually gaining God's grace. For example, we tell you that if the actual focus of an entire religion is actually shifted towards a God, how you're going to be able to gain solace, to be able to gain hope. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about salvation. Salvation in and of itself is going to be very contingent on the fact that you need hope. The fact that you're able to gain hope and the fact that you're going to be able to feel that you're actually being salvated, and there's always going to be guarantee that I'm actually able to gain salvation. But also second then, on why in and of itself is going to be much better. First, we tell you that when you actually are able to do something, you don't necessarily feel that you're not enough. This on their side of the house, people are always going to be
people are always going to be coerced to actually do good things. For example, you're going to feel that I'm not doing good enough. I'm always have to do good things. We tell you that this is so bad because not everyone are actually able to do good things. For example, I'm not able to just like give off like a third of my entire money, for example, because I know that it's so hard for me to actually do that. I'm not able to actually like help other people because it is hard for me to even help myself. I tell you that it's much better for us to actually gain hope and solace just by actually praying to God, for example, because that was matter the most. Because what matters the most is we're able to give hope and solace to the people. Proud.
Thank you. Can we have third proposition?
I'm going to be talking about two things in my speech. Firstly, whether or not people good things and under which side they do more good things. And secondly, under opt-in and the ultimate satisfactory of salvation, in which I'll prove to you why their case crumbles. Before that, I just want to do one independent rebuttal of a very, very weird case they brought upon us. They said that people under our side of the house will exploit the value of like religion, and it means like churches will tell you to do really bad things. Three responses to this. Firstly, I think there will still be a central church or like a central teaching of religion, or like the very basic Bible or something like that will be the guidance of what is a good deed or not, right? I think it is very unlikely that you are told to be to like donate for satanic reasons or something like that. It was very unclear. But secondly, given our framing that people are questioning things more, given that we are living in a world that is much more progressive, I think people will not just blindly opt in to whatever their local churches tell them. They'll do some sort of questioning, given that doing good deeds is something that is much more proximate and something that is like much more tangible to them as compared to like just buying into God's grace or something like that. But see, then flip happens when they concede that the meaning that like grace is arbitrary under their side. It means like churches are much more likely to do these bad teachings under their side because it is arbitrary, because it is not proximate. The check and balance only happen to things that are proximate. Those proximate things are the good deeds under side government. First clash then, under will people do bad things? And firstly, I just want to first thing they love you on us is that they said it will be constricting, but this was highly unrealistic given that religion needs to be like open to a certain extent. Two further responses. Firstly, the fact that religious teaching is developed over time through culture and society of change, right? It cannot be too rigid because you never know the life that your followers will live or what the world will look like in the end of the day. So these values will be broad based and not specific guides to your action, but rather instructions like being kind, like smiling to your friends or like helping people who are in need, right? It's not going to be very specific actions. But secondly, second and crucially is that this idea of what is a good deed are shaped throughout time by interactions with your friends, by interaction with your peers, by interaction with people around your local church, etc., because they themselves reciprocate these good deeds. You do interactions to understand these good deeds. What is the implication then? I want to make it very clear that interpretation of salvation under our side will be good because it's going to be something that is uniquely personal to these people, right? Because no one knows what you're gonna do in this life, and like look, this world is something that's very competitive and pushing towards undercutting other people. I think the world will be very tempting later, and this is the only check and balance to make sure people keep doing good things because it's something that's uniquely personal to them. They find enjoyment in doing things because like it's personal to them. Second thing they told you is that people will always do good under their side because they want to be salvated to a certain extent. Three responses. Firstly, you will do good under side government because you want the continuity of salvation, because you know that in order to gain salvation you need to do good things. That is why you continue to do good things under our side. That is why you have continuity. Comparatively under your side, if you don't actually have like any structural reason or any structural backing to this salvation, you are likely to opt out. But secondly, then people will opt out when they don't immediately get salvation under side opposition because they're confused as to why and then in which part of like trusting this religion I will get my salvation. They never know what religion is truly for, and they never get a true meaning in their life. But see, then they say that people will only do the minimum things under our side. Two reasons as to why this is insufficient. Firstly, I think what is most proximate to the people is like being a generally good person, right? People will look up to their parents like he was a kind man, etc., etc. That will be the guidance of like the bare minimum of being a good person. But secondly, then people are always taught to help in relation of their capability, right? The parallel here is like people paying taxes. Like you don't just give every single bit of material wealth you have, right? People understand that being a good deed and being a good person is helping people to like the capability and the comfort that they have. That is why somebody who's richer is likely to donate more than somebody who's poor. But somebody who's poor will still donate a certain extent, like other parts of his salary that he doesn't really need. And that was the bar that opposition never met. Third thing they told you is like at least people under their side will get like second chances or something like that. But then they also say that people under side government will use this as an excuse to do bad things. Firstly, I just want to point out that this cannot go both ways, right? It was very contradictory for them to say. I think what is far more likely is that this underside government becomes a preventive tool for people to do bad things in the first place. You don't need second chances if you never perpetrate the crime in the first place, because people know that they want the salvation. And I think that the average religion followers who we're talking about in this debate are likely to do good deeds under our side because they want to continue getting that salvation. But then flip happens when they concede that people will be reaccepted to their religion under their side because they have second chance. It means it's exactly they conceded to our harms that people are likely to use this as like a mitigation. Like they do some crimes in their life and they opt into religion because they want salvation, because the prerequisite is only like following God's grace or believing God's grace to a certain extent, never any meaningful action. What is the last thing they told you here? The DLO came into this debate very weird and saying that there are other motives to become a good person and therefore you will be good no matter what. But three responses to this. Firstly, good then, because it means people will be open to doing this under side government. It means people are likely to do more good deeds under our side given everything they told you about external pleasures. But secondly then, if it is something that they do a lot because like they also get like external pleasure, it means by multiplier effect under our side, if they get salvation from it and they get validation from it, they're ultimately so much more happy under our side. They constantly feel a sense of joy coming in given their own framing that people will continue doing here. But thirdly then, and this is the last and crucial thing that you need to note, is that all of these incentives that DLO talks to you about and glorify about is fleeting and is external. What does this mean then? It means that given under op, people only do things when there's something in it for them. When they only do good things if they get social validation or something like that. At least under our side of the house, it is something that's internal, right? Because I've told you it's something that people interpret as something that's uniquely personal to them because it's something that like they grew up with, something that they idolize. What does this mean then? It means that life is going to be something that's very tempting. You're always going to be tempted to do morally questionable things, and under side opposition, the implication is you are likely to do these things because you know that you could get salvation elsewhere. At least under our side of the house, people constantly do good things given DLO's own framing of how good and how enjoyable it is to do good things. Before I move on to my second clash, yes, I'll take point. Okay, then moving on. Second clash then under opt-in. And I want to point to you panels, I left less time for this clash given that they've never engaged to the core of our case given at the top of proposition. So what was it? The core of our case was that you feel much more connected because it feels like an interaction to you with God, right? We told you that this is a much more progressive world where people cannot just blatantly opt in or believe to anything you tell them. Like you tell them, oh, if insofar as you like trust my religion, you're gonna get salvation from God. They need to feel a direct connection to God. So why is it a direct connection under our side? Because you constantly do more. The more you actually give in, like the more salvation you get, right? Given like, their own framing of how nice it is to actually do good things for altruistic intent. So what were their responses? Firstly, they said that people are likely to opt out under our side when they're incapable. But note that we never demanded any material like good deeds, right? We told you that good deeds is like helping your neighbor, is like helping the lady cross the street that cost you absolutely no money and barely any amount of time. I don't understand why it's so demanding. Second thing they told you is, at least people hope under their side. Two responses to this. Firstly, to what extent do you then hope under their side? Because we never get any meaningful explanation why people will likely still continue to hope if they never get any meaningful, tangible benefit, if they never got any salvation. They've never mechanized to us to what extent and when do you actually get the salvation. But secondly then, at the point of which there's no interaction, people are less likely to actually want to opt into this religion. So how will I conclude this speech panel? I told you that people that even if the world is a beautiful place where you are likely to do good things, you do it more under our side, you get more enjoyment. Vote for Bali.
Thank you. Can we have third opposition?
Is this good enough? I assume so. Okay. If the prerequisite to fulfillment is someone telling me that what I'm doing is right and what I'm doing is good, then this exists in opposition as well. We mechanize this clearly within both of our speakers. Propositions only frame out response as just, but at least we get more happiness. Judge, what's the point of more happiness if you already get it at the end of the day? You're happy enough, you smile enough. There is no urgency on proposition side of the house. I think that's the main reason why their case fails. Edgar concludes his case exactly like that, and I think for that very reason, it just cannot win. But then, firstly, right, I want to highlight one very specific thing on proposition side of the house, that their benefits are contingent on being able to do good, having more effort, for example. But this is a questionable case because there's a threshold of good that you are able to do. That is to say that you cannot be as kind as the richest person on planet Earth because you do not have the capacity to do so. That means that in society, when the religion tries to value you, or when you want to try to value yourself, you do not feel like you're doing good enough, for example. The threshold of good deeds, for example, on the second level, is that sometimes if you're able and capable of giving good deeds, you use it to justify when you're doing something bad, for example. Because it's a threshold, right? It's, for example, I don't know, somewhat numerized. If you do a good amount of good things, you can cover it up. A good amount of bad things, you can cover it up by just doing good deeds, right? So at the end of the day, what happens within proposition is, if it's somewhat that kind of numerical sense, that just means that the most capable individuals, like the rich, for example, or the most lucky individuals, for example, are able to access this religion. They feel better because they feel like they can cover it up. They feel like they're solace. I think the prerequisite of proposition's case is exactly that when they do bad deeds, and I think the largest thing that proposition also needs to concede is that people unfortunately always have to do bad deeds. There is no one single individual on planet Earth that always has to do good deeds. And within their case, they never contend with the individuals who have to do this, which are oftentimes the most impoverished individuals. And I think that's the reason proposition's case still pays compared to our both speakers. Two clashes, therefore, in this debate. Three clashes. One, on urgency, and we're going to discuss on what's the urgency that's most important. Secondly, we're going to talk about opt-in. Thirdly, we're going to talk about the social dynamic. I think on the urgency that's most important, what the proposition assert? That there is urgency because two things. A, people cannot do good deeds, and firstly, because there's a check and balance system, because there are rational individuals that can bring light to you when you do, for example, bad things, because now the only mechanism is on good things, right? Firstly, I think it's not true that people just cannot do good deeds or have no incentive to do good things for three reasons. One, because individuals naturally have logical analysis and reason. That is to say, Immanuel Kant didn't need to be a religious individual to realize that I cannot kill someone, because there is a good logical reason to do so. And I think humans have evolved so far to be able to think that we are rational, capable individuals who naturally philosophize and think about all these kinds of things. We use it to justify it. So this also extends towards things like law that naturally makes you fear in the very first place. So I think the fear coming in from proposition is just not urgent at all. Second of all, we have intuition. We never needed to be taught as a kid that hitting someone is bad. But when we hit someone and we see our friend cry, we feel so bad. I think it's intuitive for us to think that I don't want to hit someone, I don't want to do a bad thing, or that when I see a good deed, someone smiles, I naturally have the intuition that I want to do it again the next time because I feel so good about it. But then see that there's social backlash when you don't do it, for example. I think this largely proves that there is already an urgency, that the case coming from proposition and their only margin being large amount of happiness, it's just simply not urgent, right? But I think finally, in the instances in which they don't do these kinds of good deeds, right, I think it's not a lack of belief, because I think let's just have hope, Judge. Most people are just really kind people, right? They have really good mentality. Everyone wants to be the kindest person on planet Earth, right? The issue is there's just a lack of capacity to do so. That sometimes you're impoverished by capitalism. That sometimes you're just pushed by a situation. That sometimes you need to go to work and not take care of your child. That sometimes you need to hit someone to protect yourself. I think largely this is the case, right? And I think this becomes a tipping point in this debate in terms of urgency. Because what we saw within the opposition within '01 was that we give people the ability to repent. We give people the ability to pray to God and say, God, I'm so sorry, and now I'm going to feel better about myself, so that the way I feel good about myself is that I get repentance, or that at the very least I find salvation within myself, right? The most vulnerable, impoverished person feels better about not being able to do things, and they understand what they did was wrong, and rather than wallowing into it, then like what proposition does, because that's the only way for them to gain salvation, right? and the world already punishes you, this is an exclusive benefit within opposition. And I think this is a very important role of religion, in fact, to give you salvation when you did something wrong. That's why the biggest criminals go back to prison and they pray at home when they pray in prison and say that they're wrong and say they're God. That's why a lot of people, criminals in prison end up buying into the church, buying into religion, because this is such an important part of religion at the end of the day. We kill their first urgency. But second urgency, right? They talk about there's a check and balance because they're individuals and rational individuals that continue to push on doing good things. First of all, we already explained why it largely is unimportant and doesn't exist. Second of all, there are societal systems that directly push to do so. That is to say that we naturally already get mad at people and zealots who tell you to hurt someone, and that's the only way to get God's salvation, because obviously it's wrong. Obviously it's unprincipled. And if you cannot prove that outside of a way of logic, then what's the point? It means that there's justification for it. It's fine for it. And I think in that instance, I don't think there's an urgency to directly change this at all within proposition side of the house. So how do we conclude this clash? The conclusion is simple, that their urgency on giving people more happiness and putting more effort to increase the happiness is just not urgent. Because Judge, if you think about it, if I feel happy today and I feel more happy tomorrow, if I never felt the happiness of tomorrow, I would still be happy today. And I think this means that the happiness in the future and the future and the future and the future and the future that proposition wants to champion just doesn't really matter in this debate. I think this is the conclusion to the clash. But second clash, therefore, on opt-in, right? When you tell her that opt-in happens, sure. But we already explained why people are necessarily happy enough. Judge, you don't need to feel like you donate $2 million, but because you see someone smile, you're already happy enough. We don't need religion to tell you that we don't have dysfunction in the debate. Second of all, on opt-in, right? They tell you that opt-in happens because when you believe that there's kind of a mechanized way to get happiness, you're just gonna become more reasonable to opt in, like, oh, there's A, Y, Z, B, C, C. But Judge, it's in fact the individuals who need to opt in the most, the individuals who are already doing the crimes, people who are unable to, for example, opt into the good deeds, that will not buy into it. For example, a homosexual individual will never buy into Christianity, even though that's a good thing. Why is that the case? That's simply because they do not have the capacity to do so. And for example, a thief or a robber, for example, on their side of the house will never ever to be able to repent, for example, because there's just a large amount of good deeds that they need to do, for example. And that's the only way for you to gain happiness. I know this kind of sounds like it backlashes with my opening, right? But I don't think this backlashes, right? Because this is what they also need to contend with, that largely speaking, that on their side of the house, they need to champion either two things. One, that happiness is large and they cannot, happiness is the only way to fulfill. And yeah. Second of all, I think we explained to you that opt-in is better simply when it's arbitrary. And I think this is very clear on one metric, that individuals who opt in to religion are oftentimes people who are already built into society, that society is so intrinsic towards religion. That is to say, when your parents spread to you the fear of you need to listen to religion, and when you build it upon your own morals, for example, you feel good about being able to do so. You still fear God, you still feel the punishment, but now you're able to do this. And I think it's much better to gauge it on your own levels, because even proposition wants to champion that. They tell you that they're going to teach impoverished regions different things, which, by the way, is not possible because there's a central church, like they explained, right? And they tell you all these kind of things, but that's not going to work because of the central church, right? This is exclusive to opposition side of the house. We co-opt their benefit, we flip their case, right? But then thirdly, on social dynamic, propositions assert that they get more people doing good things and they get better hope on their side of the house because you think that there's an effort in the future and there's more effort in the future. But Judge, oftentimes this effort can exist. Why is it true? When individuals who need religion the most try to opt into religion, it looks like when they're impoverished, they feel like there's no hope for tomorrow, because right now what I need is God to tell me that it's perfectly fine. But on their side of the house, God just needs me to continuously keep doing good things. Even if I get happiness by seeing someone smile, I don't think this is pointless when religion never protects me. Oppose.
Thank you. Can we have opposition reply?
What is the biggest problem in this debate panels? It is one, what is a better principle to preach in our world, and two, what is necessary for a better society? Let's first analyze and break down Pop's case from the get-go. It is not to say that the case is wrong, and it's not to say that well, generally their benefits still co-op. It is to say that they are very assumptive about the characterization of grace. It is to say because the tipping point is which is better, right? When P1 told you that grace is inherent and easy to do and everyone receive it, that caused the entirety of team proposition to also neglect its true nature of grace. I think grace panels is very important to characterize for a simple reason. It's not just praying, it's believing and practicing religious principles. This principle in which derives good acts that they so enjoy and they so preach about is also the same principles that grace follows. So why is it inherently bad? They've been trying to demonize that the entire time. But why is the weighing then? I think which has better principality to be preaching something that's important under two things. Who controls the preaching, and two, how is it done? Ob tells you that good acts will be dependent on the institution. The reason is simple, because the institution is the one preaching it according to the motion it's preaching. You will opt to believe into something that was preached to you because you trust the church and your institution or whatever you were, in. But more importantly, what is the thesis then? The thesis of this claim is to say that when anyone has the authority to coerce you or to make you believe things, it is important then to ensure that there is an ability to control that. That on proposition, you are controlling a direct narrative. This means that, it's easily abused, that there will be misinterpretations or there will be ways to miscontextualize that. How does P3 engage with this? They tell you at the end of the day that it's proximate and there will be questions. I think religion is a powerful instrument, panels. People believe in it because they think that it is something that will opt into their sense and their moral compass, and it's something that's aligned with them. I think people fear the retribution. They fear it because they're coerced into it. And even if this exists, I think the risk stands in relation. It is not that your local church will convince you to do crimes. It is to say that, well, when they have more authority to control you, that may be dangerous. But more importantly, I think this exists because this is a preferred motion, that this is a clean slate. You have to characterize why then people wouldn't actually do this. Why wouldn't religious leaders try and take advantage of this at the end of the day, right? But more importantly, I think a competitive opposition is very clear. That is that the principle to religion directly means that, well, no authority should be able to control what you preach in terms of grace. Grace is something that's already inherent in the text. You can't change the text of the Bibles or whatever to be religious text you believe in. That's why in contextualization, preaching was an important definition that was ignored by proposition, so Ob champions this clash. But secondly, what is the second clash? I think it talks about what leads to a better society. The entire point of religion is to incorporate it in daily life because, well, if I don't use the teachings I learned in church or any other religious organization, then what's the point, right? If we prove to you that this favors society better than we champion. I think Up brings many cases. We tell you, one, there's social redemption, because if I did something bad, just because I did something good, it doesn't balance it out. It's not a counterbalance. And if I litter in my neighbor's backyard and then I later throw my neighbor's trash, it doesn't balance it out. But to prove, one, social redemption exists better in opposition because individuals don't have the mentality that if I did something bad, I'll just do something good later to counterbalance it. That is what we've been telling you from first up until the end. With grace then, my goal is not to simply do good acts, it is to truly redempt myself internally. It is to then devote myself to religious principles and to turn myself around to find solutions, right? So redemption exists even better and Prop never tries to engage. This is important for two reasons. A, closure, which we told you about, because you can actually release past burdens, and B, the self-rehabilitation, because guilt will always carry you, panels. No matter how much time has passed, the wrong things you've done in the past will always carry over you. That is exactly why it's important for there to be a metric and a platform for you to release that, rather than just saying, oh, I did something bad in the past, and as a way to, fix my life, I'll do something good. It's not always as simple as that. You still feel guilty. That is why some criminals, they will opt to be heavily religious because they believe in the chance to change, and Prop never tries to actually properly engage this. But lastly, on happiness and contribution, this is the largest clash. I think happiness can be achieved on both sides. The difference is Prop achieves it by doing good things, and we achieve it by believing. This is not an important tipping point. Don't contribute. But lastly, on contribution, Ochi already explained about how social dynamic exists, that it gives people hope. This hope is something that's so pivotal to society because that is the only way people can continue believing that there is a reason to live. So proud to oppose.
Thank you. Finally, can we have proposition reply?
Check, just in case, once again, trigger warning. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Principle only goes as far as it is applied, as long as it is applied properly. That's the main point of principle. This falls under their side of the house, proud to propose. Before I go on to my clashes, 4 main things that I have to point out. On straw manning, they say that we've that we've been defending the bare minimum. We have heavily characterized to you that the one who do bare minimum is excused because they are the overworked people, they are the impoverished people. This is the only way for them to actually do good things, to actually contribute to society. When you're barely surviving, why would you do FOMO, like what opposition is trying to posit to you? But secondly, remind me, panel, are we debating about religious people or atheists? Because if you determine what is good by yourself, like what LO tried to posit, and not by church, then simply you're not religious. But thirdly, it would do good for them to listen carefully to my speech, very carefully. I will explain why later. But fourthly, we question the exclusivity of most of their case. Why is prayer exclusive on their side? Why is social reward exclusive on their side? Why is God's principle exclusive on their side when it's from religious scripture? Religion literally evolves around praying, etc. Onto my two clashes, one on individual salvation, two on societal. Onto my first clash, they posit to you that, oh, religious zealots will abuse good deeds on our side. Please listen to my first speech very carefully, because we've already mitigated this in my speech, and we flipped this in second by saying that when it's that vague, that arbitrary is exactly the leeway that we've warned you for. Exactly when it's that vague and undefined, these zealots will abuse it and will make it to their advantage on opposition side of the house. They try to posit to you that there's bad deeds that you can do on our side. We think that things like, and I quote, killing animals is not a bad deed or sin in religious thought. Bad deeds are something like lying, etc., etc. We think sure that no human are free of sin, no humans are perfect, but when you lie, after you lie, you help another person. When after you cheat, you donate to another person. This salvation is something that not only benefits you, but others around you. Making a peaceful world is the purpose of religion. That's why you should value our side more, because we inherently attempt to make a better world on our side of the house. But on to my second clash then regarding society. They try to posit to you that this arbitrary thing is their push to do good. Basic one question, what is this arbitrary thing exactly? It's exactly the danger that we posit since P1 and P2, because this arbitrariness is what enables a lot, and assuming that and you let this arbitrariness run rampant, so even they can't decide that what they're doing is good or what they're doing is bad. We posit to you that on mitigation P1, that on our side, when the good deed is deemed by NU, is how we handle how we handle these zealots enforcing on their side of the house. But also they posit that, that in status quo there's worldly reward to reciprocity, etc. We posit that on top of that, you go to heaven. We're debating in the same system. Why is this exclusive on their side of the house? The delta here is you have more incentive to do good, specifically on our side of the house, when the reward is doubled. That is to say, you have more incentive to smile. We have more incentive to help people. Our goal is not to double your happiness, but simply doubling the kindness spread around and making it normalized. This is what makes net benefit on our side. Also, they try to posit that, people will only do bare minimum on our side. At the same time, they try to posit to you that, people will be super ambitious and compete to do good things on our side. Their framing are inherently contradictory from first to second. Simply when have you heard a priest say to poor people that you need to donate $10 million to go to heaven? Why are the priests on their side so irrational, panels? If you are that privileged to be FOMO, to donate, to do good, okay, that's fine. If you are that underprivileged and can only smile, that's super fine as well on our side. We think that criminals on your side get peace on your side. Meanwhile, on our side, they actively try to make peace, they actively try to be a better person, and that's what matters. But other than that, they haven't engaged in a few main cases, being one, conservatives who think that religion is all. The majority of Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, the half of the world as a whole, they lost incentive to do good deeds, like we've paused since first speaker. They can be mean all they want on their side. They became free without the consequences. No engagement here under their side of the house. But secondly, on opting in towards religion, exactly when it's confusing, exactly when it's arbitrary, when more people abuse, this is why opting on religion, like Muslim or Christianity, is that bad on your side. Also, Lujin Taluna exists. LGBTQ can opt into religion if they want. Please be charitable. Proud to propose.
Thank you. One more round of applause for all the semifinalists in this room. That's the end of the debate. Can the live stream be cut? Thank you. So cross floor, shake hands. Congratulations everyone for finishing the round. All the observers, feel free to leave the room as the judges will use their turn to deliberate. Yeah.
Mestinya engkau bisa
mencobanya lebih bijak, semampunya berusaha, berjuang jujur berkarya, tanpa pernah meragukan kemampuan pada kita. Sungguh percayakan saja, kita istimewa, bisa.
sungguh sebatas